of some previous statements from Biden administration officials and Democrat Party officials telling us not to believe our lying eyes. We can play the video.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game.
So he has a vision. He has knowledge. He has judgment. He has a strategic thinking.
I met with the president, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he seemed fine to me.
I have complete confidence in the president. I have watched him expertly guide meetings of staff and cabinet members. I could not have more confidence in the president.
I would just tell you that I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine.
But he is, again, knowledgeable, wise.
Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing, incredible command of the details.
He is sharp. He is on top of things.
There is nothing to these challenges, these suggestions that somehow he's not sharp and he's not capable.
We see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he is to the issue.
And you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has.
I say his age is an asset.
Aha! He's wise.
Yes, he's wise. He has wisdom. He has experience.
And his experience, because of his age and his wisdom, has been invaluable to this country.
A lot of countries, people who've been in office a longer period of time are praised for their wisdom.
I have seen a lot of 72-year-olds not as capable as this 80-year-old.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president.
His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. He's fine. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
And this kind of sense that he's not ready for this job is just a bucket of BS that's so deep, your boots will get stuck in.
Mr. Spicer, I wanted to ask you, you alluded to this, but the media is so desperate to make sure President Trump never got back into office. Of course, you saw the lawfare that took place, but then, of course, this narrative that Joe Biden was fine, don't believe your lying eyes, until that they couldn't deny it anymore based on the debate. Could you just kind of compare that to your experience when you were, press secretary for President Trump, to sort of the inquiries that were made daily about his mental acuity versus the inability to do that during the 4 years under Joe Biden?
Senator, in many cases, there was no inquiry. They would just run with a story, having guests on that would question his physical or mental acuity, speculate on it, bring guests on that would speculate it. We would often then push back on those kind of stories. That's in vast contrast to the lack of any kind of curiosity that existed throughout the 4 years of President Biden. And I think the difference was they would seize on the simplest thing with President Trump, whereas in President Biden's case, there was multiple issues of physical, mental confusion, him going in the wrong direction, him falling down, him misunderstanding an event or not being able to finish the sentence. That was never the case with President Trump. They were almost manufacturing instances in his case without actually trying to get to the bottom of a story or inquire within the press office to get our response. They would go with the story, then we'd push back. With Biden, my understanding from the conversations that I would have with the media is they would never ask. They just literally were basically afraid to go there.
My last question will be for Mr. Spicer, Legacy Media. How in the world do we hold them accountable? If all of us on the outside can see it and we are saying, get to the bottom of this, but yet they refuse, what mechanisms should we put in place to be able to hold them accountable for not actually following what is clearly in front of them?
Senator, you're asking the right question. When it comes to accountability, it can't be overstated. When the Biden White House stripped 440 White House hard passes from independent journalists, they were attempting to control the narrative, to make sure that no one who wanted to hold them accountable was silenced. Part of what I think this administration has done so well is bringing in new voices, people from disparate backgrounds of all sorts, to ask the White House press secretary, to ask the senior staff, and to be able to hold them accountable. Part of it is allowing other voices in the media. We've seen what the legacy media did, but that's why I think the growth of independent media is so healthy for our democracy, and we need more of it, not less.
What about you, Mr. Spicer? Do you stand up and do it and tell the truth and run, or do you have a greater obligation to your boss?
Well, luckily, I didn't have that problem. But I would say that you have a moral obligation as an American, as a citizen, as a human being. If the leader of the free world cannot conduct themselves to make the decisions that are critical to this country and to the world, you absolutely have a moral obligation to follow the chain of command. And if they don't act, then you must. The president normally goes under a routine physical every year. In the case of President Biden, it was Dr. O'Connor who affirmatively stated his fitness for office. The doctor is probably the most competent person to attest to the president's fitness for office. The doctor should be held accountable for stating in the affirmative that President Biden was fit for office.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Biden administration may go down in history as the most brazen constitutional fraud in American history. A Potemkin presidency fronted by a failing puppet with staffers behind the scenes pulling the strings. This is not political hyperbole. The American people saw it with their own eyes during the June 2024 debate. Numerous times, Biden stood frozen behind the podium, mouth agape, eyes frozen and unblinking. When he did speak, his words were confused and disjointed. I said that night, this is the most consequential presidential debate in history because it will result in one of the two candidates being removed from the ballot. That was exactly right. And following that debate, the Democrats recognized the collapse. They pulled out their knives and took out President Biden like Caesar on the Ides of March. For all of their strutting about, protesting that they support democracy, not a one of them gave a damn about democracy when they pulled Biden off the ballot and dropped Kamala Harris in without a single Democrat primary voter voting for him. And you know what? Not a single Democrat is here today because not a single one of them gives a damn about the fact that they lied to the American people for 4 years. They knew. Every one of them knew that Joe Biden was mentally not competent to do the job. The White House press secretary, she knew when she stood in front of the American people and lied over and over and over again. And they're not here because they can't defend themselves. It wasn't a surprise. For 4 years, the White House hid President Biden from Republican senators, would not let him meet with us. He served 40 years in this body. We all know him. And they deliberately lied. And by the way, Jake Tapper had a bombshell book exposing the incredible scandal that Biden's mental decline was covered up by Jake Tapper. There's a Yiddish word, chutzpah. And that truly is chutzpah. How dare we lie and cover up what we all knew? Now, I have been asked literally 1,000 times by Texans, who was running the country? And I'm going to give you the most terrifying answer. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And not a single Democrat here cares. The most telling proof of Biden's decline came with the signature of the president, the symbol of executive authority that was outsourced to a machine. Mr. Wold, you're a lawyer who served in the White House counsel's office. You understand the gravity of presidential action. Does the president's signature carry legal and constitutional weight under Article 2?
Yes.
Is the act of signing an executive order or signing a law or granting a pardon a delegable duty of the president?
So in that opinion in 2005 from OLC, they said essentially that an Autopen could be used by a subordinate, but the president's determination as to sign the document can never be delegated.
can that authority be transferred to a staffer or a machine without the president's explicit authorization?
Never.
And if you look at the statistics are stunning. In 2021, President Biden issued 78 executive orders. None were signed with an Autopen. That first year of the presidency, Biden, I suppose, was relatively lucid, and 78 executive orders he signed by hand. The second year, however, we see the Autopen emerge. The first Autopen executive order was issued on July 15th, 2022. After that day, 100% of the executive orders issued in 2022 were signed by an Autopen. In 2023, Biden issued 24 executive orders. 16 were Autopenned. In 2024, Biden issued 19. 14 were Autopenned. In 2025, Biden issued 14 executive orders. Every single one was Autopenned. Mr. Wald, let me ask you as a legal matter, if there's a law that's passed both houses of Congress and it goes to the White House, and a staffer autopens signing that law without the president's authorization, is that law legally passed and signed into law?
No.
If an executive order is issued and a staffer autopens it without the president's authorization, is that executive order legally binding?
No.
And if a pardon is issued from the President of the United States and a staffer autopens it without the president's authorization, is that pardon legally binding?
No.
Under the Biden White House, the ceremonial song, Hail to the Chief, was effectively replaced with Hail to the Pen. And it was an outright assault on democracy. And every reporter covering this ought to ask, why doesn't a Democrat care? We heard about the moral responsibilities of a staffer. How about an elected senator who knows damn well that if we get into a war and Iran is preparing to fire a nuclear weapon at the United States, that the commander-in-chief is busy playing with his Jell-O and is not competent to defend ourselves? And every member of the cabinet, the chief of staff, the press secretary, and the members of Congress who lied about this on a daily basis with the press's complicity, they are all responsible for subverting democracy.
So, Mr. Spicer, maybe the mechanics were a little bit different. Maybe the timing was not the same, but doesn't that demonstrate the capacity of the leadership of the Democratic Party, of the Biden family, of the senior staff and the president's administration to be able to convince the president that he no longer was capable of serving and needed to step down?
Senator, the left and their friends in the media like to throw around terms like threats to democracy, constitutional crisis. And if we don't have confidence in the leader of the free world making decisions, that truly is the definition of a constitutional crisis and the threat to democracy. So for all of these folks to stand up here and use those phrases over and over again and then not have the desire to show up, to understand what's happening, to stand up at the time, as we discussed earlier, whether it was a staffer or a cabinet member, to literally avoid going to the Oval Office, and in the case of the media, to avoid the questions that were so clearly obvious to the rest of America, shows that they were more concerned with power and preserving that power and an agenda than they were at really caring about the Constitution and democracy.
Mr. Spicer, you've criticized the corporate media and legacy media folks for sort of lying down here or being complicit because of their, whether it's Trump derangement syndrome or whatever the reason was. Who specifically do you think gets a gold star for lying most profusely and just sort of continuing to cover this up over the years?
Sir, that would be like a photo finish. There'd be a lot that would probably right there at first place. They're all culpable. I mean, I read some of the headlines to the committee earlier, the Washington Post, CNN, NBC, where they, without evidence, to use their phrase, went after President Trump's physical and mental acuity, and yet failed to ask similar questions of the White House press office publicly. They failed to cover the stories. I don't think that there's a winner. I think they're all losers.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.